ladies and gentlemen, for today's recipe, it's gonna come from the Pioneer Women's Cookbook, Dinner Time, and I'm gonna teach you how to make chocolate pudding. Now I know what you're saying, Mrs. Ramos, you can buy chocolate pudding at the grocery store. You can, but this is better. Now before we get started, if you hear a funny crunching noise in the background, that's my dogs. We gave them retriever rolls so they would not bark and disturb. So you see my dogs happily chewing. So that's the noise you hear in the background. So for today's recipe, you're gonna need a heavy saucepan. You will need 1.5 cups of granulated sugar. Go ahead and put that in. Then you're going to need something called cornstarch. Cornstarch is a thickener. You're going to need 1/4 of a cup of cornstarch. And like flour, when you scoop the cornstarch up, you do need to make sure that you level it off, just like that. And then you're gonna need to stir in 1/4 of a teaspoon of salt. And I always pour my salt over another bowl because sometimes I make a mess. See, look at that. You can just use your finger to level it across. Then you need to get a whisk, and you need to whisk gently together until your cornstarch and sugar are combined. And you notice, if you can see, it kind of looks like smoke coming up. That's the cornstarch. You have to whisk gently or else you'll end up with a big cloud of cornstarch, and nobody wants that. Now, once you have that ready, you're gonna pour in 3 cups of whole milk. And it has to be whole milk. It cannot be low fat. It cannot be non-fat. That will not make a good pudding. Whole milk, everybody. And then you're gonna whisk it together. And then I have right here 4 egg yolks. And I had to separate the egg yolks from the whites. I'm gonna pour them in. Oops, little splash. I'm not the neatest when it comes to cooking. And I'm going to whisk that together. Now this recipe is actually vanilla pudding, and that's what you make. And then at the very end, I'll show you how to turn it into chocolate pudding. So we're gonna add in, since this is vanilla pudding, we're gonna add in 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla extract. And again, I'm going to pour over a bowl because I am messy. See, look at that, I just made a mess. And then we're gonna whisk it a little bit more, and we are going to turn on the heat. Now you wanna make sure you turn it to medium. Not super high, but that's just enough. And you're gonna whisk it for about 3 to 4 minutes until it gets nice and thick. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I have been over here whisking for about 5 minutes. Mr. Ramos is gonna move the camera to the pudding. You notice how it is getting nice and thick. And if I take the whisk out, do you see how it's starting to bubble? We're gonna set the timer for 1 minute, and I'm gonna whisk for 1 minute. And we're gonna stop, and it's gonna bubble, and it's gonna get really nice and thick. And then we're gonna turn it into chocolate pudding. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you look, our pudding is nice and bubbling. It bubbled for 1 minute. I'm shutting the heat off. I'm moving it over here. I am pouring in 6.5 ounces of bittersweet chocolate that I chopped up real fine. And I'm gonna stir it as fast as I can without having any of it splash. And it's going to melt very, very quick because the pudding is very, very hot. Now, once the chocolate has melted, you have a couple choices. You can either pour it into one big bowl and stick it in the refrigerator. You could pour it into some smaller bowls and put it in the refrigerator. Or you can do what I'm gonna do. I have right here a pie crust I made. Now you don't have to make your pie crust from scratch. You can buy the pre-made kind at the grocery store. And we're gonna take this hot pudding and we are going to pour it into the pie crust. Oops, I got a little bit of a swirl right there. Now, I'm going to put this in the refrigerator, and it is going to refrigerate for about 6 hours. And then it will be ready to eat. Although, to be honest, since this is 9:30 at night that I'm making this, we'll be having it for breakfast. So ladies and gentlemen, I'll be posting the recipe for the pudding. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I think next week I might teach you how to make a chocolate cake. All right, thank you.